Spoiler Peace Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I am the co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. My pronouns are he, him.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Once again, I salute you.
I almost saluted too because if you heard last week, Evan shared, he saluted me when I said that and shared that it reminds him of Starfleet Academy.
Yep.
And I'm here for Star Trek.
Yeah. Well, listeners, this week Dave is on vacation and we hope he's having a fun time. We'll certainly miss him, but there will be no shortage of spicy opinions this week. Just going to put that out there.
Totally, but I'm really dying to know what Dave thinks about both of these movies. But yes, things are going to get spicy.
Yes, they are. And yes, I also look forward to hearing what Dave thinks about both these movies. One more so than the other, if I'm being honest. Because it would really surprise me if he enjoyed one of them. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so as you all know, we do a weekly exclusive audio for our patrons over on Patreon. And this week, in honor of one of the movies we're going to be discussing, we talked about the 1992 film Army of Darkness and pretty much all things Evil Dead. We really...
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of fun in this week's audio. Sorry, Dave. This joke where, like, anytime Dave is not going to be on the show, we tell him what we're doing for Patreon. He's like, "Oh man, I wish I was there for that." So we can do no right when it comes to the Patreon.
Nope. I told you we should have done a musical, though. He wouldn't have wanted to do a musical.
That's true. We know, listeners, Dave hates musicals, in case you don't know this already. But we had to do Evil Dead. We had to do an Evil Dead movie because this week, one of the movies we're talking about is Evil Dead Rise. So if you're a patron, definitely check that out. And if you're not, consider joining. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive audio that we do for you each week. There's also polls that you can vote in. We're going to have one of those coming up soon. And yeah, so it's really fun. And as I mentioned, this week we're going to be talking about Evil Dead Rise. And the other movie we're going to be talking about is Beau is Afraid. And we're actually going to start with Beau is Afraid. So, you may have heard about this movie. It's written, directed by Ari Aster, who many people know did Hereditary and Midsommar. And yeah, it stars Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Ryan, Nathan Lane, Zoe Lister-Jones, Parker Posey. It's got a lot of people in it. Richard Kind is in this.
Patti LuPone.
I mean, there's people like Bill Hader who are there in like Blink If You Miss It cameo kind of appearances.
That was a great cameo, by the way.
Yes, it was. He was being interviewed. He was a UPS driver being interviewed, and he was facing away from the camera in the interview. His voice is just so distinct, you know? Come on, okay, it's Bill Hader. So let's give you the one sentence IMDb summary because I'm really curious how they're going to describe this movie. Following the sudden death of his mother, a mild-mannered but anxiety-ridden man confronts his darkest fears as he embarks on an epic, Kafka-esque odyssey back home. Oof. Well, if I had read that summary, I might not have gone to see this movie. Whereas Kafka-esque is not usually a turn-on for me when it comes to plot descriptions.
Yeah, that also it does diverge from the official A24 synopsis.
What did they have to say?
They say a paranoid man embarks on an epic odyssey to get home to his mother in this bold and ingeniously depraved new film from writer-director Ari Aster. So,
well, it's certainly bold, I'll say that, but I don't think it's ingeniously depraved. I think it's just depraved.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, though, that Kafka-esque keeps coming up with people's descriptions of this film. And believe me, I 100% agree, see why. But it's funny, I think of it as more Kaufman-esque. Like, very much. But anyway, we'll dive in.
I mean, no better place.
But that description that you read on IMDb, that would have enticed me. So I would have been in.
Fair enough.
I stress would have.
Yes. Yeah, well we saw this movie last night, so it's still fairly fresh in our minds.
Yes.
And yeah, so I mean, I remember going. I know going into this, I'd heard that this movie was divisive. I'd read divisive things from critics. I know that Ari Aster said he had some quote where he described this movie as going through the character's life through his guts and coming out his butt or something.
Oh, God.
It was a very strange thing. And I'm like, oh, great. What am I getting into? And I just felt like I had to see this because I'd heard so many different things about it. And I'm here to say that I was not a fan. Yeah. Not a fan. Megan, please share with listeners what you thought about this movie.
Well, so Evan and I were sitting next to each other at the screening that we went to last night, as Evan said. And beyond my being very fidgety, and it's not because of the runtime. This is a 3-hour movie, and I watch long movies. I don't want to say quite often, but often enough, especially nowadays. Lots of movies are over 2.5 hours or run around 2 hours and 20 minutes. And at the end of the film, I turned to you, Evan, and said, what the fuck did we just watch?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have been consumed with thinking about this. Not this movie per se, because that might make it sound like I liked it. I couldn't stand this. Could not stand this.
Yeah.
And it really was perplexing to me because I'm watching this film and I'm watching all of the, like, right from the start, it's weird. And that sounds great to me because I love weird. Give me weird. Give me the weirder, the better. And like we're starting off in this very long scene where it's opening in Beau and his therapist's office. And I'm like, oh my God, I love a therapy scene. Give me a therapy scene. Like, I remember when Sopranos first came out, people talked about, these were ridiculous people and they were dead wrong, but they talked about how the therapy scenes were, boring or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, those are the most riveting scenes. Give me therapy scenes. I find those fascinating. And this scene it felt like it was happening for 2 hours. And it was, I think, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. Yeah. And I was like, oh God, is this what we're in for? And no, because then it just careens into chaos and absurdity and surrealism, which again, that kind of sounds great to me. But it just, we start off where he's in his apartment and he lives downtown in some unnamed city, and there's all kinds of vagrants and criminals, and there's a mass murderer who's naked called the Birthday Boy Stab Killer, and he's running around murdering people.
Nude.
And it's just it's so stupid. And
there's a corpse in the middle of the road too.
Yes.
In his neighborhood. There's just a
I think
dead
there's a
body.
couple, actually. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they're just dead bodies. People are just walking over them, not doing anything about it.
Yeah, and there's porn like shops and peep shows and just all around, and he's really riddled with anxiety and paranoia, and to the point where when he's trying to he takes this medication that his doctor's like, you must take it with water. You must take it with water. And it's this fake drug. Like, it's not an actual medicine or medication that exists. And he runs out of water because the pipes are being worked on. And there's signs in the background that they never address, but you see that's like, watch out for the brown recluse spider in the building. And you see a brown recluse spider in the foreground when he comes back home one day. But anyway, he's taking his medication and he runs out of water because the taps aren't working. And so he has to run across the street, and it's a one take of him which, by the way, the cinematography is great in this because it's the same DP who worked with Ari Aster on Hereditary and Midsommar, depending on how you want to pronounce it. so the cinematography is great. I'll say that for it. And yeah, and he runs into this convenience store and is like taking water, and then he's trying to pay, but he doesn't have enough money, and he had to prop the door open because his keys and his suitcase were stolen when he's trying to go get it to his mother. It's just, and then all the people are like flooding into the building, and then his apartment's broken into, and it's like all this chaos. And then we leave that, and because he gets hit by a car because he's naked, and a cop thinks he's the naked man killer. And then Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane, who were driving the car, take him in. And then the movie is segmented that way. And so then we're in their house for a while. And then eventually he has to run away because their teen daughter drinks paint and dies. And she's got massive problems and is always trying to frame Beau for things. And Beau just wants to get back home to his mom. But Nathan Lane is a surgeon who stitched him up, and then is then like, no, I can't take you today. I'll take you tomorrow. And then tomorrow he's like, no, I can't take you today. I have a surprise surgery. Oh no. And so then when the daughter dies, then Amy Ryan, the mom, is freaking out. And then she sends this guy who's living with them, who's a PTSD veteran who has these violent bouts, and he chases after him, and then Beau goes into the woods, and then there's a theater troupe, and then there's this whole animated sequence, which, by the way, I actually liked the weird animated sequence because it's by the two filmmakers who did The Wolf House, and I think that's stunning. I think the animated sequence is great, but yeah. But so anyway, this movie, like, again, I feel like if I was listening to myself talking about this, I'd be like, this movie sounds fantastic. It's so weird. It's so chaotic. And I was bored to tears.
Same.
Bored beyond belief. I could not believe what a great cast this is. I love Joaquin Phoenix. I love Amy Ryan. I love Zoe Lister-Jones. I love Patti LuPone. Nathan Lane is great. Like, this is a stacked cast. And it's so boring. It's so painful. And then when we finally get to the climax, and I do mean climax both figuratively and literally. So Beau finally gets home after he's watched this play in the woods where he inserts himself kind of in this fan fiction way, where this play is about a person who's had kids and has gotten separated from his family and is on this journey, and he envisions himself and he's like, it's me, and then he reunites with his sons, but he talks about how he's never had sex because he's been a virgin, because he's been waiting for his teen crush Elaine all this time. And then the sons are like, well, how could you be our father then if you never had sex? And then it disappears because it was all in his head. So he's all like imagining this life he could have had, which is actually quite sad and very bittersweet. But yeah, and then so he finally gets back home, and his mother has died because he couldn't go home initially because his suitcase was stolen and his keys were stolen, and his mother doesn't believe him, and she's like guilt tripping him, and he's like, we can work this out, which feels very weird, and like you're talking about somebody you're in a relationship with, which I should have known then, because it's definitely Oedipal themes. And yeah, and then he finally gets home, and then he runs into Elaine, the crush from his youth, and it's Parker Posey, and then they have sex, and the whole reason he hasn't had sex was because his mother told him that his father died the moment that he was conceived, which is so gross and weird. And come to find out, his father's not dead, nor is his mother, because he was trying to race home to get to her funeral, and she's already been, like, the service is already over. And then his mother's like berating him for having sex in her bed, and Parker Posey dies mid climax, and so her and is frozen in rigor mortis. And and so Patti LuPone, his mother, is like berating him and like dumping on him about what a terrible person he is and a terrible son, and she's done nothing but love him and he's been terrible. And then you find out that his therapist has been working for her for years and all of their sessions have been recorded, and she knows all of it. And then he confronts her about his father, and his father's still alive, but surprise, up in the attic, he has a twin brother who's been alive all this time and is old now, obviously, because he is too. And his father is a giant penis with testicles. And Jeeves, the guy who's the veteran, comes in trying to kill Beau, but instead attacks the penis and stabs the penis, and the penis stabs him in the head, and then they both die. And then Beau runs away and gets in a sailboat, but surprise, it's in an arena, very Truman Show, defending your life-esque, and he's put on trial for being a terrible son, and then the boat explodes and he dies. The end.
Yeah, that covers all of the beats of the movie, and it sounds a lot more interesting in description than it is watching. I fucking hated this movie. It, like Megan, I was so bored from the opening minute to the last painful moment before the boat exploded, and I was just so happy that it was over. This movie is weird. It's disjointed. It squanders an excellent cast with a just bizarre script and story. The cinematography, I agree, is really the only thing worth mentioning, particularly that animated sequence you describe where he's inserting himself into the play that he's listening to or imagining himself. There's such cool forest that he's wandering through and really interesting art direction. But other than that, just fuck this movie. Like, it is just so bad. I can't believe that the person who made Hereditary and Midsommar, both horror films that I love, could make this piece of crap. Just like, how is this the same person?
Well, so here's what's funny about that. I have a couple thoughts on that. So Ari Aster has said that this is the most him film ever. This is the film he's put the most of himself, his humor, his weirdness, everything in.
Gross.
I know. And so, yeah. And so I'm like, oh, this is really who you are, because I love Hereditary too. And I love Midsommar as well. But Hereditary, I had issues with regarding its depiction of gender. And as much as I love Toni Collette in that lead role, and good God, that is a bravura performance, one of my favorites of that year, it's got some serious issues regarding motherhood. And it felt very sexist and misogynist to me, but I was like, I almost felt like I didn't have enough information in a weird way. And, I read a really great trans reading of that film where a trans critic talked about how kind of, I don't want to say validating, but maybe that's the right word it was for them. And so that shed different light, and I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, and you can love problematic things. I certainly do. But then after seeing this film, I'm like, oh no, this is straight up fucking misogynist shit. And like, I don't want to speculate about his own relationships with women and his mother, but oh my God. And like, when I was reading about this film and kind of doing more research in preparation for this, I read about one of his viral short films that I can't think of the name of it. It's like Meeting the Johnsons or something like that. But it's basically a short film all about a black family and how the son is sexually abusing the father. And
what?
Yeah.
Ugh,
and
gross again.
Exactly. And when he received criticism for having a black family depicted in this way, he kind of, again, from what I read, it felt like he was kind of brushing it off like, oh, well, we knew we'd get some criticism, but, oh well. And, that's his prerogative. But I'm also like, ooh, I get a sense you're not really, I don't know, very sensitive to other people, maybe besides yourself, or certainly criticism. And I just, I like the depiction, especially in the beginning of the film, the depiction of urban life, it felt so icky to me. Like, it felt so gross. Like, it was like this very clear juxtaposition between, as we're progressing through urban life to suburbs to the country, it's like, oh, that's what we're supposed to be idealizing, is the country, and urban life is gross, and people who live in urbanity. They're gross. And it just, to me, that felt like such a racist element, even though most of whom we see in the urban part are white people. There was something about it that just, it felt very classist. It felt just wrong. And it made me wildly uncomfortable. And so, yeah, so I'm kind of having all these like conflicting things. And then I'm like, maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe I'm psychoanalyzing this way too much. You know, he's probably a perfectly nice person and, and whatever. But I'm like, but when you put it out there, like, this is my masterpiece and this is the most me I've done, I got a question, you know? Like,
right. Yeah, you're showing us all the ugliest parts of yourself in this. It does feel very classist and judgmental of people who live in the city, basically just making everyone in that neighborhood look like just a giant, you know, dumpster of a community. Everyone's gross. They, you know, piss and shit and do everything everywhere. And like when they trash his apartment, it's just disgusting. There's shit on the walls. There's a blender that's still blending God knows what. You know, it feels very judgmental. I mean, especially even of the guy in the convenience store that's threatening to call the cops on him because he's not ponying up the change in time to pay for his water. And it's a very misogynist film in terms of how it represents women, and for the almost all the female characters are depicted as like these unhinged, overbearing weirdos, particularly that daughter, his mom. Oh my God, you watch this movie and you think to yourself, this person has very serious unresolved mommy issues with this whole thing of the mother faking her death, and then, you know, he strangles her later in the film.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was so triggering and upsetting, obviously.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that they're Jewish women. I mean, like Zoe Lister-Jones and Patti LuPone. And I know Ari Aster is Jewish too, and so is Joaquin Phoenix. But I'm like, this, to me, that just felt even more disturbing. And like, you know, and the whole reason I brought this, I kind of lost my train of thought because there's a lot to unpack here. But the reason I mentioned that awful, gross sounding short film is that it's very clear that he's pushing taboos, and he, you know, did that in Hereditary too in many ways. And I don't know. I think there's a way to push boundaries and to question taboos. I don't know. For me, this is not the way to do it.
No, I do. I feel like this movie is offensive to Jewish people too, with his depiction of like a friend of ours, critic Sam Cohen, would say, like, is this good for the Jews? No, this is not good for the Jews, this movie.
Well, it's such a stereotype that, you know, Jewish mothers are very overbearing and very involved in their children's lives. And this is like taking that and like ramping it up to 11. Fuck 11, like 111.
Right. And the weird, gross sexual tension between her. Oh
my God, yes.
Like laying in bed with him when she, you know, when he's a kid, when we're seeing the flashbacks of the way that she's inserting herself into his romantic life. And then later, when you find out she's alive, it's only after she's watched him have sex with Parker Posey.
Yes.
That's when she reveals herself, after Parker Posey's naked corpse is on the ground, and she instructs the help to carry her out.
Also, speaking of another potentially racist element and gross element, because when you just said the help, it reminded me of the housekeeper nanny Martha, who sacrificed herself to pose as the dead body for her, the headless dead body. And that's revolt. Like, it's just, and like, listen, I know movies are not endorsements of things. A lot of times they are trying to show horrible, awful, despicable things within individuals and society. And so, but at the same time, I feel like that just because depiction is not endorsement doesn't mean that it's above criticism. And the fact that this film appears on the surface to be so complex because of the stunning cinematography and how the mise en scène is very layered. Like everything is very particular and meticulous, even amongst the chaos of the urban area. There are tons of fake movie posters, and there's tons of fake books, and there's fake graffiti, and everything is done with an intentionality and a purpose, and that's very clear. And that's also the same in Hereditary and in Midsummer as well, which is great. But I think it gives the illusion that it's a very complex film, and it's a very deep film, and it's 3 hours. It's, you know, this bloated length. It's just, I don't think this is a very complex film at all. No. I think underneath it's a very misogynist look at a trope, a gross one. And you're right, the psychosexual things happening between the mother and son. Oh my God. I'm so glad you mentioned it, because I was so wildly uncomfortable watching. And I know that's the point. Like, of course, like the whole movie is supposed to make you uncomfortable. It's supposed to be a nightmare, of course, but I don't think it has anything to say. That's the thing.
That's what I was just about to say, is push buttons, push taboos, or break taboos, push my buttons, you know, shock me, but have something interesting to say. And I think that is the heart of what's wrong with this movie, is that it has nothing interesting to say. And when I finished it, I didn't think, oh, well, it was weird and it was long, but at least I'm really feeling like it had some pointed commentary that it was offering. No, it felt pointless, and that just makes me mad. When I watch a 3-hour movie and it feels pointless, that just pisses me off.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like I completely agree with you. You articulated that perfectly. I feel like a film should take you on a journey, an emotional one, an intellectual one. It should make you feel something, think something, challenge me. But you're right. It doesn't do any of those things. And I think what's funny about that is that this is so heavily leaning into the Odyssey and Homer and Odysseus trying to get back home. Like, it's so obvious doing that. And Ari Aster has compared it to that. I've seen others compare it to that. And, you know, there are other filmic kind of reimaginings of Odysseus, from like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, to Homeward Bound, to even Sean Baker's Tangerine in many ways. And so you can do really weird, vivid retellings of these classic myths and these classic hero stories. Again, this is not, I mean, yes, technically that's what it's doing, but it's so shallow. And that's, I think, what really, really pisses me off, is that you're going to have all of this veneer of complexity, and it's saying nothing. So this leads to a question I want to ask you, and I think I know where you're going to say, yeah, I've been contemplating this, and this is what's been consuming me for the past 24 hours since seeing this film. Is this film bad? Like, is it actually badly crafted, or did we just despise it?
I think it's badly crafted, because I think if we watch this movie and still don't feel like there's a clear point or point of view, then it's bad. It's badly crafted. They did not succeed. It'd be one thing if you and I watched the film and thought it made a point, I despise that point, or I vehemently disagree with that point. But I don't think that either of us felt like there was a point.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That is a fair point, and I don't disagree. What I will say, because I'm always reticent to say something is straight up bad, because clearly a lot of people love this movie and think it is a masterpiece and think it's brilliant and fantastic. And, you know, and everybody's opinions diverge. Everybody's bringing their own biases to the table and their own tastes and subjectivity and all of that. For me, I'm still trying to wrestle with whether or not it's actually bad, because it is a great cast. It is great production design. It is beautiful cinematography. So at least those elements are definitely working. But for me, the number one reason it didn't work, the huge, huge, huge undercurrent, is cruelty. The film is mean. It is so vicious. It's vicious to Beau. It's vicious to all of the characters in this film, whether they're nice, whether they're, cruel, whether they're somewhere in between, just kind of living their lives. This movie is just vicious to everyone and to humanity in essence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just not my bag. That's not what I enjoy at all. And I didn't find this movie funny, although the crowd we went to see this with, most of them thought it was quite hilarious, which is just perplexing to me. I am bewildered by that. But again, I don't like mean humor. So again, maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't know. But it is just, this movie is just soaked in cruelty. And I hate that.
I was not a fan of that either, and I was equally perplexed by people who thought this movie was funny. I kept wondering to myself, what was funny in that scene? The only times that I laughed that I remember, one was a sight gag. It was they were packing up the funeral for his mom, and there was a catering truck that said Shiva Steves.
That was funny.
And it said,
my
grub for your grief. I was like, okay, that's funny. That's a funny thing,
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the element of the fact that his mother, up until this point in the film, we thought his mother died by a chandelier falling on her head. And so, she had no head anymore. And there was a dent in the floor with a plaque that said, here fell the chandelier that killed whatever her name was. I don't even fucking care.
Mona Wasserman. Why do I remember that?
Yeah, here's the chandelier. Here lied the chandelier that killed Mona Wasserman. And I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I liked Shiva Steves. That I found very... very amusing. Yeah. Yes. And I kind of liked, and again, I liked the sight gag of the brown recluse spider poster because they never address it. You just see it and you just have to observe. And I kind of appreciate that. But that's not enough with all the other shit going on. That's just not enough to sustain a 3-hour movie. Not for me anyway.
No,
but
definitely not.
Yeah.
Woof.
I don't know, Evan. I feel like I'm questioning everything because Martin Scorsese enjoyed this film and found it fascinating and watched it twice.
Good for him.
I know. I don't
like everything Scorsese does either.
Oh, that's fair. That's very fair.
He probably wanted to do a double feature of this and The Aviator, which was one of my least favorite Scorsese movies.
I've actually never seen The Aviator, so I can't say. But I was like, I do love Age of Innocence. Age of Innocence is one of my favorite films. It's great. But anyway, I digress. This is not about Martin Scorsese. But I'm like, am I missing something? And I don't think I am. But sometimes you question yourself, like, am I missing something that everybody else is getting? And I don't think we are. I think because I've read reviews, I'm reading things, and I'm just like, no, I think we're like seeing the same movie and somehow just diverging completely. Not you and I, but the people who liked this movie.
Everyone else and us, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, I've seen a lot of people say like, your mileage may vary, you may not like this. And something that I saw going in too was that a lot of people were like, this is not a horror film. So if that's what you're expecting, you'll be disappointed. And I'm like, I was kind of, because he's known for horror and there are horror elements, like there's tension in it and whatnot, but I'm okay with not being horror, but
it can not be horror. Just have something to say.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was thinking too is that because I keep coming back to this, that there are other films, although I think they have something to say, and I think that's the difference. But like there are other films that are very divisive that I love that are also embracing this kind of chaos and absurdity, like Darren Aronofsky's Mother. I adore that film. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Give it to me. I love it. And that is a film that is very controversial, very divisive, very upsetting, and is just nonstop chaos, mayhem, horrible things happening. But I think with that, there is something being said, for one. So I think it matches its complexity emotionally and thematically, but also if you're going to do a film like this, like I want some propulsion, like give me some inertia, like make me feel something. Like I also think about like I Martin Scorsese, speaking of, there was a Q&A and he compared this to like a panic attack. And as someone who's had a panic attack, many of them, this does not feel like that watching this movie. But you know what did? The Safdie brothers' Uncut Gems. And that's a film that is so dripping with tension and neurosis and anxiety. And again, it comes down to making you feel something. And this film just, for me, failed in that regard.
Yeah. Didn't do it. Uncut Gems, great movie though. Kept me on the edge of my seat, literally.
Right? Yeah. But it is it is interesting because reading about the making of this film, like Joaquin Phoenix, like apparently like he did a lot of his own stunts, which I think is interesting. Like when he crashes through that glass door, that's him in the tub wrestling around with the person who is like on the ceiling. That's him. So that's really like, that's kind of surprising that he like put himself out there in that way, and good for him. Just wish I liked this movie.
Yeah. Let's move on. I'm tired of talking about this movie. I feel like I've already given it too much time. I'd much rather talk about Evil Dead Rise.
I know. It's my fault. I had so much to say about this this dumb movie.
I mean, I had a lot to say about what I didn't like about it, but I'd much rather talk about Evil Dead Rise.
Yes.
So, Evil Dead Rise. It is the newest film in the Evil Dead franchise. It is written and directed by Lee Cronin. And here is our IMDb plot summary. A twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh-possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. Woof. Yeah. I mean, what I liked about this movie is that it takes the essence of the Evil Dead, lore. Someone, opens the book, reads the passage. Oh crap, now the demons are everywhere and they're taking everybody over. Except they kind of do a fake out in the start of this movie where they have it at a cabin in the woods, not the same type of cabin. This one's an A-frame. And they even do kind of a fake out in the beginning with the evil force. That's the kind of first shot that we're seeing is the POV of the evil force. It turns out is a drone. And then there's this like scene at the cabin with like, there's a girl that went there with her boyfriend, and I don't know, was it her cousin or her friend or something? And then the girl was like, "Oh, I'm sick. I'm laying down," and so she goes to like her sister or cousin, whoever it is, goes to like check up on her, and then finds she's possessed and gets her scalp ripped off by the demon. Yeah. After seeing The Stylist recently, it was particularly reminiscent of that. And so that ends with, the demons are alive and well, and one of them is hovering in the way that they like to do in the Evil Dead movies over the lake, and then the title Evil Dead Rise rises like the sun behind.
That title card is brilliant. Fantastic.
Yeah. And then they're like one day earlier, and then you just see a completely different group of people and think, I wonder if they'll get back to those people at the cabin. And I love that they set this movie in this decrepit, crumbling apartment building in LA that's on the verge of evicting everyone because they're going to knock it down. And this story around these two sisters. One is a guitar tech who finds out in the beginning in a punk venue bathroom and she's pregnant, and so she travels home to see her sister. And her sister is got 3 kids and has got to move out of this apartment, and her husband has left her, and things are just shit. And there's this earthquake which opens up a hole in the ground, and her son climbs into the hole, and the building used to be a bank, and so he finds the bank vault and finds this bin with a bunch of dusty records, and the Necronomicon's in there. But like a different version we haven't seen. This one doesn't have a face on the front, but it has these gross teeth for like binding. And so then, because he's like a DJ, he takes it out and plays the records, and the records have the passages from the book, and then sets, demons everywhere. The mom gets possessed, and everyone starts getting possessed, and then the whole people in the building are getting killed one by one, and then turning. it's it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this movie. What about you, Megan?
Yeah, I thought this was great. I had so much fun with this. As we talked about on the Patreon bonus episode, we talked about Army of Darkness, and I shared that I did a whole rewatch of all the Evil Deads.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as much as I love those movies, I don't recommend watching them all in a row because most of them are the same story, the same premise. They're all a cabin in the woods. Well, except for Army of Darkness, which is medieval times, but
yeah,
I digress.
Castle in the Woods.
Castle in the Woods, yes. So it was really great to see it, like you said, moved into an urban setting and putting it in this decrepit apartment building. It really reminded me of the 2020 horror film, the Iranian horror film, The Night, about an Iranian couple living in the U.S. and they have a baby and they're looking to spend the night somewhere and they have to stay in this old hotel because it's like the only place open or something like that. And and there's demons in that too. So it kind of reminded me of that very much in a great way. And I love that it's still a very contained story by containing it in this apartment building. But I like that it's a different environment and we can play with the different levels, like the elevator and the different floors and the different apartments. And I really, really like that. But very much the same way that in Evil Dead 1 and 2, they're trapped in the cabin because the bridge goes out, mysteriously. It's crumpled and destroyed. Very similarly, they're trapped because the elevator is being, very weird and then bleeds. And then we get later in the film very much a Shining homage.
Yeah, with the doors opening. Elevator.
Yeah, and the blood all pouring out is great.
Except this time the characters are in the elevator and are drowning in the blood. The blood is rising in the elevator and then it lets out at the bottom floor. Also, the stairs are out in this.
Yes.
They've fallen off in the, I don't know if in the earthquake or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I love those choices and I love the visuals of this. I love the cinematography choices. Like when so I don't know anybody's names. I'm terrible. The mom sister, when she's the one who becomes possessed initially, and she's out in the hallway and she's killing people. There's not a lot of people in this apartment complex, but she's killing people. And her 3 kids and her sister are in the apartment. And you see her through the fisheye lens. And it's such great shots. And you see one of the guys who's this older guy who smokes all the time and has a shotgun. And you see him entering into frame and exiting. And then you see him get tossed. And you see the sister who's possessed, looking in, let me in. And it just feels very much like the big bad wolf, let me in. And I don't know. I kind of love that. And I love the visuals. And I think it's really well done in that regard. I liked the characters. I liked the acting. Yeah, my criticism is I did not, and I know we talked about this after the screening too. I did not love how the sister who is the tech musician, is pregnant. I mean, that's fine that she's pregnant, but they're laying this on so heavy, that she needs to be maternal. And the youngest child, Cassie, is are you going to be a mom? And it's just absurd. And these are her, this is her nieces and nephews. Shouldn't she care about them because she cares about them or because she's just a decent human being? Why does she need to be pregnant and about to be a mother in order to be maternal and be protective? It's just absurd. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, she doesn't need the extra motivation to survive this scenario. She should want her nieces and nephews to survive. And I think that's one of the cool things about this movie. It is not afraid to kill kids and turn them into deadites. Because 2 of the 3 kids do not make it. And they get possessed and their bodies get so badly mangled, stabbed with kitchen knives and torched with I don't even remember what in the kitchen. This is gory. I really dug how gory it is. There's gnarly stuff. Before this screening, Megan was telling me that eye things in movies like
Oh
really
my God.
wig her out, and there's
Oh
multiple
yeah.
eye scenes in here. Someone's eye gets bitten out and then spit into another person's mouth and they choke on the eyeball.
I know, but a very nice homage to Evil Dead because of the flying eyeball, the ping
Yep.
pong shot. That was a ping. I love that eye was a ping pong ball, by the way. But I digress. Yeah, no, the eye things were creepy, but did not weird me out. The thing that got me the most skeeved out was the scalping. And the grater, the cheese grater. There's a scene where the sister who's pregnant. I feel bad calling her that. What is her name? Oh my God, I should look
We
up her
got
name.
Ellie, and I think the other sister's name was
Ellie's the mom,
Beth.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth.
Yeah.
Okay, so Beth, who's essentially the protagonist. Yeah, so Beth is trying to crawl away from Ellie, I think, or it's one of the kids. I can't remember, but basically,
it's the kid. Yeah.
It is the kid.
It's Bridget, I think.
Yes, it's Bridget. That's right. So Bridget gets her when Bridget's a deadite. She gets her with a cheese grater, and the leg just slides down. And there's something about that even though there arguably are grosser things or worse things that could happen, somehow that was the thing that got me, and I found them be the most disgusting.
Yeah, it was gruesome. I had seen the Red Band trailer, so I knew that moment was coming with the box grater, but it still was just as gnarly watching her drag that box grater over her leg. Oh man.
I know. I love that I call it a cheese grater and I don't even eat cheese, but I eat vegan cheese. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, no, that I didn't watch the trailer. I wanted to go in completely unknown to everything, and it was so bad, but it was so good. It was so bad in the best possible
totally
gore out kind of way. But yeah, no, and I also loved the pacing of this too. This was just riveting and tense, and it just kept moving.
Yeah. It moved, and it was funny because the movie ended and I looked at my watch and I realized the movie was under an hour and a half. It went by fast.
It did. It's a quick film. Yeah. Speaking, I don't know why this just popped in my head. Oh, speaking of horrific things, I know why. So the other thing that was wildly horrific, and also I'm very curious if Lee Cronin is a video game fan, because the kind of climactic moment where Ellie, the mom, gets her insides ripped out by her children, and they all form this mass, this single body of legs and arms and everything. There is a video game, it's one of my favorites, called Inside, and it is the creepiest, weirdest, love it video game. And that's the pinnacle of the game, where that's all these bodies are kind of mushed into this ball. So it's a ball with all of these legs and arms coming out of it, and it bounces along. It's so weird. It's so great. I'm not doing this game justice. But all I could think of was that game when I saw that. And I'm oh my God, that's horrifying to be this mangled body mass.
Yeah.
It was terrifying, and I loved it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. This movie plays with the space so effectively too.
Yes.
Inside the apartment, in the hallways, in the elevator. Because when Ellie, the mom, is first possessed, she is in the elevator, and then all of the wires from the elevator come out and basically latch onto her and just twist and contort her body into all these messed up positions. And it's just so creepy anytime they're out in the hallway. You mentioned the part where you can see through the people, where the mom is out there killing people, and that I agree is just so well done. This movie is gory and gross and well paced and fun and plays with the space well, and I love that it kind of updates the premise / location for for Evil Dead. It's not in a cabin, it's in an urban environment, but still just as tense. And I love the climactic showdown in the parking garage in the basement.
Oh, that's great.
Where I'd forgotten this, but early in the film, you see that there's a landscaping truck that's down there, and it's got a wood chipper in it. And so it ends up that Beth and the youngest daughter, I'm totally blanking on her name. Cassie are down there chased by this mass that Megan was just describing of body parts. Evil creature is chasing them, and it turns on the wood chipper and almost pulls Beth into it. But then Beth frees herself, and she has a chainsaw, by the way. Of course, this is Evil Dead. You gotta have a chainsaw. That was in the truck. This one's
And
yellow, not red.
and
a shotgun. And so Beth and Cassie end up pushing this nightmare creature into the wood chipper and just spraying blood all over the inside of this garage. And then she has to finish it off with a chainsaw to the head, which is the last piece. Is that the Ellie, the mom's head, is the last part that has to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I know. Such a great it's so good, and such great homage to the previous Evil Deads, of course, with Ash and the shotgun and the chainsaw, which Fede Alvarez is also incorporates the chainsaw and shotgun too. Speaking of the elevator scene with Ellie before she gets possessed, or when she's getting possessed, and the wires, that is a really gross scene, and it's great. It's really visually striking. What I really liked about it is that it's, again, paying homage to the tree in the previous entries, but we don't get a tree rape scene. Thank fucking God. Because if I had to see one more tree rape scene, I was going to lose my fucking mind. And I'm like, that's what was great about Army of Darkness. Doesn't have that. But all the other three do. So it was really nice that this is still paying that visual, it's still doing a visual allusion to that, but it's doing something different.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I thought, oh no, we're not going there with the rape again.
Right.
And then, okay, good. It wasn't rapey wire. It was just evil wire that was strangling her.
Yes. Yes. Just
there's a lot. There's a few moments that pay direct homage to the other Evil Dead films, but not in a way that's so wink, wink, nudge, nudgy. Like, I mean, there is the Dead by Dawn, where all the possessed people are laughing maniacally and saying, you'll be dead by dawn. Okay, that's probably the most obvious winky one.
Oh, there's also when Beth says, "Come and get some."
Yeah, you want some?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the other one I was going to say that I remembered noticing.
Sorry, I got too excited.
No, it's okay. But otherwise, it's not one of those we're going to do fan service every 2 seconds with tons of references. We'll pay homage, and we will have moments that remind you of the other movies, but we're not going to be those guys.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is a very different entry, even besides the fact that it's in a different location. And that there's no humor, at all.
No.
And I think that that's going to annoy some people. I think some people will be disappointed by that. And I get that, but I'm okay with it. I mean, again, Fede Alvarez is not funny at all. And I don't think, and neither is the first Evil Dead. And so I'm okay with it. I mean, would I have loved to have seen Ash? Although technically there is a Bruce Campbell cameo, supposedly he was one of the priests in the photo, but yeah, I heard somebody say that. I didn't see it, but supposedly
I didn't notice that either when I was watching it.
It goes by so quickly.
Yeah, it was a blink and you miss it for real.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, but I'm okay. I'm totally okay with that. I'm okay with that. That it's different. It's still playing in the same universe, but it's a very different entry. And I'm only halfway through The Hole in the Ground, Lee Cronin's first film, and it's good so far. It's really good. So I'm very interested to see what else he does. And I like that all of these characters, even though I know I complained about the fact that Beth was pregnant, I like that these characters are real people. And I like that there's kind of an allusion to the fact that, and I don't know if you got this, I got the illusion that Beth has had an abortion before, because she's when she's talking to Ellie and she's like, I made a mistake and I'm in trouble again. I need you to help me again. And she's alluding to the fact that she's pregnant. I kind of got the sense that she's had an abortion before, which doesn't need to be, demonized. No pun intended, or maybe pun intended, but because we're talking about demons and possession. Right. But I like that she's someone who doesn't want to be pregnant, and she's got her career and she's ambitious about that. But I also like that, the sisters are kind of estranged, but not because of something terrible or malevolent, but just because like, oh, they each have their own lives. Like Ellie has her
Right.
kids and she's going through a breakup, and Beth feels terrible because she's like, if I'd known I'd be here. And she's like, well, I tried calling you. And she's like, well, I'm on the road and I'm busy. So I kind of like that it's just like life got in the way as you know, shit happens. That does. And I like that the kids also feel like real people too. Oh, and speaking of the kids, what I really liked about Danny, this is a side thing, but Danny, played by, I think it's Morgan Davies. Morgan Davies is trans, and I love that. And what I think is really cool about that is that that's never, not that it needs to be, but it's never mentioned. And it's just like, yay, more trans and non-binary actors in roles, which, you know, is great.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you about Beth probably had an abortion before, because they also like make all those comments of like, oh, you're a groupie, and they call her the slut and the stuff. I feel like they play up the sex piece to that enough.
Yeah.
That I agree with you. There has to be some backstory there around that.
And I feel like under other circumstances, like if it was worse writing or worse acting, I might have gotten an anti-abortion vibe, like kind of like, you know, that like she's being like kind of in a punitive way, like, oh, she's having another abortion or something like that. But I didn't get that vibe, even though, like I said, I didn't like the whole pregnancy angle. It makes her more maternal and more protective of the kids. But yeah, but simultaneously, I didn't get that vibe where it was like condemning her life or her choices.
I think that's really like you. It's really my only critique of the film is that it's just a little bit heavy-handed with the pregnancy and the maternal piece. Other than that, I couldn't think of anything that I disliked in this movie or felt like could have been done better. I felt like it was a very solid movie.
Totally. Yeah. Speaking about the maternal piece, this was a long time ago, about like 10 years ago. Actually, that's not even that long. But anyway, there was a study done about women in women-led films and women in action films. And basically that it found that a lot of women, and this might be different now, but at that time, about 10, 15 years ago, women in action films often were mothers and often were protective kind of lioness mothers. And again, this kind of feeds into that. But I can't be mad at, well, I mean, I guess I could be, but I can't be mad at such a good, entertaining film that is female-led. And yeah. But I just had a lot of fun with this. I really liked it a lot.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and something... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's a good feeling to be able to recommend at least one of these movies this week.
I know. Yeah, and something... I just wanted to say this because we had such a great conversation about it on the Patreon, but we talked about gender and possession, and I think it's and especially in the Evil Dead franchise and how Ash is subverting, you know, kind of final girl things. I think it's interesting to get... And I know we get it in the 2013 film, but it's interesting to get a final girl who is a woman and... You know, but we're seeing the two women, you know, kind of battle, and I don't know. It's just interesting. I just find it interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, it does. It does subvert the the roles. It spins things around again.
Yes, it does.
All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to mention about Evil Dead Rise?
I think the only thing is that I like how I was so invested in that story and the characters that I had forgotten entirely about the opening of the film, as good as that is. So when we circle back around and we see the sister or the friend who's like, she lives in the apartment building and she's wearing a hat. And by the way, very Alexis Rose from Schitt's Creek.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And she's like, I overslept. And she's like, I'm coming to get you. And the last thing we see is her being possessed, which is the end of the first Evil Dead. And I just really like that kind of looping back around because I'd completely forgotten about the kids in the cabin in the woods.
Right. Yeah. Because she's down there in the garage with all the blood and the demon seed, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
Demon seed. But it is interesting because it's like, what stops this? And I don't think there's anything. I think it's very much like It Follows. Like it never stops. It just keeps going. You know, keeps haunting and possessing different people, but it never actually stops.
If the wood chipper didn't stop it, I don't really know what would. Because, I mean, traditionally in this, it's, you know, dismember it, and then you can bury it and it can't really bother you. It doesn't stop being possessed even after being dismembered. But this thing is pulverized, and that still doesn't work. And it feels very Return of the Living Dead style zombie.
Ooh.
I don't know if have you seen that?
No.
Well, that zombie can't be killed either. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. No, I need to see all of them. I've only seen Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead? Day of the Dead. I don't know. One of them. That's terrible. I need to see more. Anyway, I digress.
Yep.
That's what I like about another thing I like about the Evil Dead series in this one too, is that they kind of combine possession with zombies in a weird way. Like it takes some zombie, tropes. And I like that because I like zombie films. And possession films are fascinating about losing control. Anyway, I could just keep going on. This is a great film. I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Both of us highly recommend this movie. Definitely worth checking out. And I think we both know where we stand on Beau is Afraid.
Oh boy.
I would not waste your time on it.
I mean, there are people who enjoy it, and you might be one of them, but I do not recommend it at all. Evan, we're so in sync this week. It's wild.
I know. It is wild. It's fun though. We've had some fun conversations even about one movie that we couldn't stand.
Oh my God. I never want to think about that movie. Now that I've exhausted my brain thinking about it, I never want to think about it again.
Moving on. Well, that does it for another episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. As always, we want to say a huge thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you for making us sound great week after week.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find the show anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also head over to our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find all of our episodes there. You can also check out our merch. We have a merch tab there to take you to our TeePublic store, and we have lots of fun Spoiler Piece merch you can get. And if you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. It'll take you to your platform of choice. You can also follow us on social media and engage with us. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. We're also on Facebook, so you can connect with us there. You can also send us an email. We're spoilerpiece@gmail.com. You want to tell us, hey, Beau is Afraid is great and you're wrong. I'd love to hear your case.
I would too.
So let's hear it. If you have disagree with us about Beau is Afraid, you can also give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
You can leave us a spicy voicemail telling us why we're wrong about Beau is Afraid.
Or if you agree with us on either film too, I want to hear that too.
Yeah. Or if you want to just tell us what you thought of Evil Dead Rise, love to hear that too. And if you really, really like the show, please consider joining our Patreon. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this week's exclusive audio, we are talking about the 1992 film Army of Darkness and the Evil Dead franchise, and at large, I guess. It's a broad conversation. And so you can go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece and sign up and get access to exclusive audio and also our back catalog, which is several hundred back episodes where we review older films. So definitely check that out. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
And we'll see you next week.
And we miss you, Dave. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.